My own daughter stood in my foyer, my house, and looked me in the eye. Dad, maybe it's time you let someone else handle things. You're not all there anymore. She said it calmly, like it was a kindness, like she hadn't just slapped me with the softest, coldest knife I've ever felt. By Sunday, I had lost everything. The accounts were frozen, the trust transferred. Even the antique car collection titles moved without my signature. Over $3.2 million vanished in 72 hours. Turns out, when someone files medical paperwork saying you're no longer of sound mind and attaches a forged power of attorney banks, listen fast. I'm Richard Taylor, 68 years old, retired federal judge. I've sent senators to prison. I've seen empires fall in federal court, but I never expected the people who shared my last name to try to erase me while I was still breathing. If you've ever been blindsided by your own blood, if someone ever took what you built and said you were too old to understand it, drop your city in the comments, because what they didn't realize was I'd seen this before. From drug cartels in D to CEOs laundering pensions, I know how to spot a cover-up. And more importantly, I know how to build a case. Subscribe, because what started as betrayal turned into the kind of revenge you can only pull off if you know exactly how to use the law. A stamped envelope marked POA revocation, signed and notarized. A chrome key fob resting on a probate court folder. A paused Ring camera. Video. Chad whispering in the driveway. Just get him to sign. He won't know. Cut to a soft piano note. Then silence. Let me take you back to how this began, because it didn't start with Thanksgiving. It started long before that. It started with silence, with loyalty, with sacrifice. Looking back now, I see the pattern. It wasn't one moment. It was years of little choices, quiet sacrifices, shrugged off disrespect. After my wife passed, I poured myself into our kids. Lisa was the oldest, always the loudest, always needed the most. Chad came into the picture when she was 22, a real estate guy with expensive taste and no follow-through. I had doubts, but I bit my tongue, because that's what fathers do. Meanwhile, my youngest, Jordan, took a teaching job in Oregon. Never asked for a dime, never expected praise, just lived his life quietly like I used to. But Lisa knew how to command attention. She brought the kids over every Sunday. Even when I said I needed rest, she cried when I questioned her finances. She pouted if I didn't approve every new renovation idea she had for her kitchen. And I kept showing up, writing tuition checks for my grandkids, helping Chad refinance after his third business pivot. It wasn't just money. It was time, years of skipped vacations, missed holidays, and holding back opinions to keep the peace. Thanksgiving, Christmas, even Father's Day. They were always on her schedule. And if I ever voiced concern, if I ever said I felt more like a checkbook than a father, I'd get the same response. Dad, don't be dramatic. We're just trying to help. Help! Funny word. That, because helping shouldn't look like moving me into the guest house under the guise of safety. It shouldn't look like secretly meeting with a neurologist I'd never seen. And it damn sure shouldn't look like slipping a power of attorney in between mail I was told was just insurance paperwork. I remember last July, Lisa came over with barbecue from my favorite spot in town, brought the grandkids, laughed in the kitchen, handed me a folder, and said, "Just sign these. Dad, it's the usual stuff. We're updating your medical records." She poured the sweet tea herself. That folder, it had a forged POI, already notarized, just needed my signature. I didn't know then. I trusted her. That was my sin. Jordan called me that same night. He said, "Dad, I've been getting weird emails about the trust. Did you change the primary executor?" I hadn't. I told him I'd check in the morning. I didn't check, because I wanted to believe Lisa wouldn't cross that line. Looking back, I see now that line didn't exist for her. Not really. She'd been raised with praise, lived her life with the assumption that she was the favorite, the heir apparent, the one who stayed close, the one who gave me grandkids. And I let her have that story. I let her believe she was entitled because it was easier than confronting the imbalance. The irony, I'd been building a fortress her whole life, a trust portfolio worth $35 million, real estate in Vermont, stocks in Tesla, Berkshire, Apple, all under the radar, quiet, controlled, legal to the letter, and she almost took it all. Almost. I didn't notice it all at once. It started small, almost laughably small. An alert from Chase. One Tuesday afternoon. Online access suspended due to updated authorization. I thought it was fraud, a phishing attempt. I called the bank. They were polite, professional, and no help at all. "Mr. Taylor, your daughter Lisa is listed as your financial agent. We're unable to disclose details without her present." That hit like a brick. I hung up, confused. A financial agent, I never appointed one. I pulled out the dusty file where I kept all my estate documents. Everything was there. My original will, my living trust. The last POA I signed was over 12 years ago, and it sure as hell wasn't Lisa. I called her. Straightforward. Calm. Lisa, why is the bank saying you have control over my accounts? She laughed. Actually laughed? Oh, Dad, it's just the POA stuff. We talked about this. Remember the paperwork you signed over the summer? I didn't remember. Not that. Not any conversation that involved transferring control of my finances. You've been forgetting things lately, she added quickly, as if trying to ease the blow. This is just for your protection. My blood went cold. For my protection. That's when I knew something wasn't right. I called Jordan. He didn't hesitate. Dad, I've been watching. There's been movement in the trust, big withdrawals, property titles shifting, and Chad's name showed up on a filing last week in Miami. I sat in silence. Jordan continued. You need to look at the Vermont estate. It's listed under a holding company now. Not your name. I hung up and opened my safe. Inside was the hard drive where I kept scanned copies of every signature I'd ever made. I pulled it up. Pulled up the scanned POA they must have used. And there it was my name. But off. Not just off. Crooked. Slanted. The tail on the R too sharp. The cross on the T a little too flat. A forgery. I stared at it. My stomach tightening. They didn't just take money. They took my identity. They made me invisible on paper. And soon enough, in real life, over the next 72 hours, I started pulling threads. Lisa had been meeting with an elder care attorney 6 months earlier. Her name appeared on email logs linked to the family's shared iCloud calendar. One of the emails mentioned a capacity hearing. I was never told. Not once. The doctor she used, some local neurologist, had filed a report saying I showed signs of progressive cognitive decline. I had never met him. The same report was cited in the bank's compliance file. Alongside it, a video clip pulled from a Ring camera. Chad on my own front porch saying, "Just get him to sign it. He won't read past the first page. He trusts you." That clip hit harder than anything else, because I recognized the timestamp. It was the same night Lisa brought over barbecue. The same night she sat across from me, smiled, and asked about my blood pressure. Every detail, every strange moment from the past year clicked into place like a cruel puzzle. Over $243,780 had already been siphoned from my trust over 14 months. Real estate moved. Medical records weaponized. And me, I was the last to know. But I knew now, and I wasn't going to call a family meeting. I was going to build a case. The truth never breaks cleanly. It unspools, knot by knot, until you see the whole rope for what it is. That Friday, I sat in my study with the rain tapping the Vermont window pane. Papers covered every inch of my desk legal pads, notarized forms, copies of bank logs, emails from lawyers whose names I didn't recognize. I laid them out, one beside the other, like evidence on a courtroom table. Every detail felt sharper, more painful, but also finally clear. First, the surface layer. What happened today? I lost access to every account in my name. Lisa's attorney sent a letter to my house, announcing that, effective immediately, all matters of your estate are to be handled through your daughter's representation. There was even a notarized document stating I was no longer able to manage my own affairs. It smelled of legal paper and cologne, a faint, expensive blend Chad always wore, still lingering on the envelope. Second layer conspiracy. Who else signed on? The more I dug, the more I realized it wasn't just Lisa and Chad. Their lawyer was a friend from Chad's college days. He'd handled shady property transfers before. The notary public who stamped the POO had a LinkedIn connection to Lisa. Even the neurologist who signed the capacity report, a golfing buddy of Chad's, paid twice in cash. And then there were emails, one after another forwarded, BCC'd, exchanged late at night. I spotted my own name copied on messages I'd never seen. That's when it clicked. The betrayal wasn't a slip. It was a plan. They'd prepared every piece for months, maybe longer. Jordan, my quiet son, living across the country, was cut out of every conversation, every asset. If I'd died quietly, they would have swept it all under the rug. Clean. Third layer. Timeline. How long had it run? I combed through credit card statements, property records, even the calendar app Lisa had set up for my medical reminders. Looking closer, I saw it. 16 months ago, Lisa's first meeting with the elder law attorney. 14 months ago, the first big withdrawal from my investment account, masked as a renovation deposit. 9 months ago, the Vermont property quietly deeded to a Shell LLC in Miami, signed on my behalf. 3 months ago, the capacity assessment, filled with symptoms and quotes I'd never said, filed with the local court. Last month, Lisa changed my Medicare mailing address so I wouldn't see the insurance notifications stacking up in a P.O. box I'd never visited. I could almost hear the hiss of the envelope as I slid it open. I remember the way the ink bled where someone signed for me. The false urgency in Lisa's texts. Dad, don't worry. It's just paperwork. Let me take care of you. In that 30 seconds sitting in the dim study, the smell of paper and cold Vermont air thick around me, I replayed every breadcrumb, every warning sign, every soft lie. Lisa's hurried Sunday visits, Chad's sudden interest in my passwords, Jordan's voice on the phone. Worried, pushed aside. I saw the light bulb montage in my mind. Lisa's lawyer, Chad's notary, the fake neurologist, the shell companies, the helpful texts, the barbecue dinner, all connected, all designed to separate me from everything I'd built. But I wasn't just some confused old man. I was a judge, and if they wanted a legal fight, I'd show them what a real case looked like. I took out my phone, started recording, started documenting, and as I spoke into the mic, I felt the old fire in my gut steady, focused, unbreakable. The evidence was all here, and I was going to use every last piece. I didn't rage. I didn't break things or shout. That isn't how real justice works, not in court, and not in life. I worked quietly, precisely, step by step, the way I always have. First, I called my old friend, Howard, a retired probate attorney who owed me more than a few favors. I laid out the facts, every signature, every withdrawal, every forged document. Howard didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said only, "Send everything. Leave nothing out." Next, I called Jordan. I kept my voice steady, even when I felt the edges of betrayal start to sting again. "Jordan, I need your help. This isn't just family drama. It's criminal." He understood. He booked the next flight out. While I waited, I began assembling my evidence pack. The POO with the crooked signature, scanned bank statements with every unauthorized transfer marked in red, email threads forwarded from Lisa's iCloud calendar, the video clip from the Ring camera, Chad's voice, clear as day. "Just get him to sign." I notarized everything. I made 3 copies, kept one, locked away. Old habits die hard. Then came the forensic accountant. Maria was a no-nonsense New Yorker, sharp as a razor. She dug through every transaction, building a timeline even tighter than mine. She found hidden transfers to a Miami LLC. She found cash withdrawals Lisa had labeled as medical supplies and Chad's fingerprints on wire instructions he wasn't supposed to have. Howard filed for an emergency injunction the next morning. He hit the court with a blizzard of affidavits, Ring footage, bank logs, and Maria's forensic report. Within 24 hours, the judge issued an order, all accounts frozen, immediate suspension of POA, independent medical assessment required. At the same time, I had Howard send certified letters to every institution, banks, brokerage firms, Medicare, even the local police. I attached a copy of the Ring footage, a notarized statement contesting the capacity report, and the suspicious LLC property transfers. Every move documented, every call logged. I even reached out to my old contact at the state bar, just to make sure Lisa's attorney friend would face questions of his own. Jordan arrived that night. He didn't waste time with apologies. He rolled up his sleeves and started sorting files beside me at the kitchen table. There's a kind of relief in finally seeing someone's true colors, even if it hurts. 2 days later, the process server knocked on Lisa's door. Chad answered, tried to act surprised. Lisa's hands shook as she read the order. No more access. No more quick transfers. No more hiding behind forged paperwork. That afternoon, I signed the documents to transfer the Vermont estate back to my name. My classic cars retrieved. Titles returned. Maria sat across from me, sipping black coffee, and said, "I've never seen a cleaner case. They never expected you to fight back. And I hadn't done it with drama. I'd done it the only way I knew paper. Signatures, law, no shouting, just truth." I watched the sun set over my own property that night, the frost glinting on the grass, every light in the house my own again. But it wasn't over yet. There were consequences still to come, and everyone would see them. Justice doesn't arrive in a flash. It builds, slow and heavy, until everyone feels its weight. The court hearing was scheduled within a week. Not a criminal trial yet, but the kind of emergency probate session where reputations and futures unravel fast. Lisa arrived flanked by her lawyer and Chad, eyes puffy, jaw clenched. I walked in with Howard, Maria, and Jordan. I wasn't there for a spectacle. I was there for the truth. The judge started with the facts. Maria's forensic timeline, the forged signature, the video footage, the sudden medical report from a doctor I'd never met, Jordan's emails showing he'd been excluded from every major decision, and, for the first time, Lisa's own words, texts she'd sent to Chad, joking about Dad not noticing if a few zeros moved. Watching her hear her own words, read aloud, seeing Chad shrink lower in his seat. As the judge recited the property records, there was no victory in it, only a kind of quiet, necessary reckoning. The ruling came quickly. All accounts and titles restored to my control. Immediate suspension of Lisa's power of attorney, permanently revoked. Court-ordered restitution. Lisa and Chad required to repay every dollar, every asset, with interest. Public notice of elder financial abuse posted in the local paper and the HOA Facebook group. Lisa's attorney friend referred to the state bar for misconduct. Chad required to complete 200 hours of community labor cleaning, public parks, scrubbing the floors in the very retirement home he once joked I'd end up in. The consequences spread fast. Lisa's reputation gone in a week. Her friends stopped calling. She lost her spot on the HOA board. Word traveled through town faster than any official notice could. Chad's business dead. No one wanted to work with a man whose face was now attached to the phrase elder exploitation. Their accounts, once flush with my money, were frozen. Even their children's private school asked about the family situation, and they had no answer. A week later, Lisa came to my door. No makeup, no bravado. She asked if we could talk privately. I let her inside, but only to the foyer. She tried to apologize, tried to blame Chad. Stress. The burden of caregiving. I listened. I didn't argue. When she finished, I handed her a letter, the court order, her signature at the bottom. Dad, you don't have to do this. We're family. I met her eyes. We were Lisa. But family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. And family doesn't leave you for dead while they move into your house. She cried. I let her. When she finally left, the house was quiet, empty, but not lonely. The next day, I walked through my Vermont estate, my home, my land. Every room felt lighter. I sat on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the last leaves fall. For the first time in years, the weight wasn't on my chest. It was gone. Justice had come not just through the law, but through truth. And in the empty space where old trust had died, I felt something new peace. Yes, but something else. Too, a sense that what's right, once fought for, can finally breathe. 6 months later, spring arrived in Vermont. The snow melted, the air softened, and everything green began to push back through the ground. It was the kind of slow, steady renewal I'd almost forgotten how to appreciate. A lot can change in half a year. I'd thought justice would mean satisfaction, maybe even revenge. But what it really gave me was something quieter, a clean slate. Jordan visits almost every weekend now. We fish, chop wood, and talk about things that actually matter. He started calling this place home base. He brings friends sometimes, teachers, artists, people with stories and laughter that fill the rooms with a warmth I haven't felt in decades. There's no talk of trusts, no tension over money or inheritance, just company that feels earned, not owed. Maria, my forensic accountant, drops by now and then with her family. Sometimes she brings pie. Sometimes she just needs a place to get out of the city for a while. We sit on the porch and talk about everything but business. Howard, my old lawyer, retired for good and keeps threatening to take up painting. I think he means it. Even the neighbors, who once only waved from a distance, have begun to stop by. The town forgave me for having a quiet reputation. They saw the headlines, they read the court notice, and instead of pity, most offered respect. I didn't realize until now how much I'd missed this people who show up simply because they want to, not because of what they might get. Lisa and Chad. I haven't seen much of them. Chad moved out, last I heard. Lisa sent a card on my birthday. Nothing more. I'm not angry. Not anymore. I just finally see them, clearly for who they are, and what I almost let them take. That's the thing about family. Blood may matter, but it doesn't outrank boundaries. Trust isn't automatic. Respect isn't inherited. Both are earned every single day. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the outsider, or you've had to rebuild after betrayal, maybe you know this lesson already. You can't control what family does, but you can choose who sits at your table. I host Sunday dinners now. Sometimes there are 3 of us, sometimes a dozen. No assigned seats, no secrets, just stories and laughter, and the kind of peace that doesn't need to be earned twice. If you were in my shoes, would you have pressed charges? Would you have let them back in? Or kept that boundary? Let me know in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story struck a nerve, hit subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the family you choose and the boundaries you defend are the only thing that keep you whole. Thanks for listening. And wherever you are, may your next season bring something honest, something earned, and something new.